Tropical Storm Dolly has dissipated, but that doesn't mean impacts aren't still on the way. Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We're your home for Caribbean weather. It's great to see you on this Friday. We're going to get into the latest on Dolly, the impacts that this system is still going to bring to the Northeast Caribbean, and then look at other potential tropical development areas as we move into next week. As always, love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments section below what's been happening in your area, what the weather has been like. What a beautiful satellite presentation on Dolly. Now, this is a remnant low. It has already fallen apart and is being categorized by the Hurricane Center as a post-tropical system or an open tropical wave. You can see Dolly was always a very small storm. I love this high-resolution visible satellite imagery. If we go back, you can see this big ball of convection on the northeast side of the storm. Notice how that's left behind as the center of circulation is racing off to the west at 25 miles an hour. This is some of the shear that the storm is beginning to encounter to go along with some drier air. That's why it's such a small storm, because of the dry air. But that shear has really ripped apart the mid-levels of that system, and Dolly will now be in open waves as it moves off towards the west. Again, all the newest information on Dolly is at the bottom of your screen. Winds are still technically 40 miles an hour right now. It's less than 1,000 miles from the Leeward Islands, and because of a fast forward speed at 25 miles an hour, Dolly is likely to begin to impact portions of the Leeward Islands, the Northeast Caribbean, late on Saturday through Sunday and Monday. This is the infrared satellite imagery, and again, just a very compact system. We're going to get some, blow up of convection from time to time as well, but what I am anticipating here as we go through the next several days is that this is going to be a squally rainmaker to go along with some very gusty winds, especially in the high elevations, and the opportunity to get ourselves some beneficial rain, but also some areas where we could see some flooding rains as well. Now, already winds are freshening up around 30 to 35 miles an hour, and if you do live in the Leeward Islands in general, especially from Guadeloupe north to Montserrat, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Bart's, Anguilla, and eventually the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola. These are all the areas that are likely to have the most impacts out of Dolly. So first things first, let me just kind of break down what I expect out of Dolly. And again, it's dissipated into a tropical wave, but the impacts are still going to be arriving in the Leeward Islands over the weekend. That will begin tomorrow through Monday. Now, there will still be some areas that will likely get more than 4 inches of rain, more than 100 millimeters. Some of that will be very beneficial. Others, again, falling too fast could lead to areas of flash flooding, and then very gusty squalls coming in with that remnant low and that open tropical wave. We could have some wind gusts in some of the high elevations of our islands, and we do have some high elevation areas that could be over 50 miles an hour. So let me break down how I kind of expect this to play out. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to switch over to our models, and we're going to look at the opportunity for some rain. So that's the next weather headline, if you will. What are the impacts here to the Eastern Caribbean? Well, let's break this down. Again, we stop our area of development here for the Hurricane Center. So now it's just all about the sloppy weekend it's going to bring. The interesting thing is this, my friends, because this is becoming an elongated tropical wave, the wind field is expanding north to south, and so is the moisture field. We might not have that concentrated 45 mile an hour sustained winds if this was still a tropical storm, but we're going to broaden the wind field and the rain, and that's great news for drought-stricken areas. So I know we've got to deal with some problem spots, but there will be some beneficial rain that'll coming through. Because of that, you'll notice that now we have even a little bit better rain chance as far south as the Windward Islands, especially Barbados and St. Lucia. However, we're still concentrated in the Leeward Islands. Again, Guadeloupe, but especially up towards Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Bart's, and Anguilla. Watch for these gusty squalls to move through beginning during the day on Saturday. Highest chance for that rain will likely be overnight Saturday and into Sunday. And then things moving west quickly will progress towards the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico as we get into Sunday and Monday. So places like Rotown, Tortola, Yost Van Dyke, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, Vieques, Culebra, and Puerto Rico will see some much needed rain late this weekend and on Monday. And then these tropical downpours will extend into Hispaniola, especially on the Dominican Republic side. Can't rule out some showers that get into Turks and Caicos and the southeast Bahamas, but whatever this ends up being will begin to fade by that point in time. Again, we're not expecting at this point a lot of regeneration out of this system. It should be this open wave for the most part in the Northeast Caribbean. Let me show you the simulated radar. That was kind of our model showing you it coming through, but you can see the actual time frame right here. And again, I'm talking about late Saturday and into Sunday, mainly Leeward Islands. Now, it's obviously going to kick up sea conditions as well. We're likely to get some small craft advisories, some rip current statements, and even some small craft warnings. You might want to seek shelter and let this pass you by. Generally speaking, by Wednesday, it's out of here. But for the most part, for the Leeward Islands, it exits the area early Monday, and then for Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, late Monday and into Tuesday. Now, as far as rainfall totals go, again, they could be quite healthy. I am expecting some spots to get more than 4 inches of rain, and there could be a few bullseyes even higher than that. The areas that I've already mentioned right now have the best opportunity for several inches of rain, 50 to 100 millimeters plus. Look at the bullseye on the eastern coastline of Puerto Rico, Fajardo, including the islands Vieques and Culebra. That's more than 6 inches of rain there. And again, could be too much in too short of an amount of time to lead to some flash flooding problems. But for the most part, we're going to be able to handle this kind of rain. But again, gusty winds could cause some power issues, could cause some elevated tidal concerns as well. So like I said, just because this is going to end up being an open system and not a true tropical system, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be some impacts for the northeastern sides of the Caribbean. So if you do live in these areas, please monitor the situation very carefully. Just one more look at what is left over of Dolly. I'm going to bring on the infrared and the visible satellite imagery together. And again, nice blow up of convection, but because the air is so dry around the storm, it's small, it's compact, and the wind shear is really beginning to play a key factor. And again, back over to that visible satellite imagery, just one more time, you can see the deep convection is left behind as the shear from the west just rips apart this storm. Again, it's moving very quickly at around 25 miles an hour. So that's the latest on what is left over of Dolly, if you will. There is more areas to watch next week. I'm going to get into that coming up just a little bit later in the forecast, but we do have some active weather to talk about. And as we do that, if you're getting anything out of this video, I do appreciate you joining a fantastic weather community. Hit that subscribe button for me right now. Thank you for liking this video as well. Both really support the channel. If you have a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. Again, hoping you're liking the all-new Meteo Mundo. We've got your 5-day forecast down below. We've got your information hub with all of the latest tropical outlooks or what's happening right now across your area, watches, warnings, marine advisories. So again, appreciate all of that support. Going to switch over now to our marine forecast so our boaters and fishermen can get an eye on what's happening in their area. Let's start off in our northern areas. We have a boundary coming through the northern Gulf that extends its way back into the northern sides of the Bahamas. This has been an area that has had quite active weather the last couple of afternoons, and we're running it right back again on this Friday. Thunderstorms are going to be even more expansive today. They're still going to be mainly concentrated in the northern and northwest Bahamas, so thunderstorms will be breaking out across Walker's Key, Grand Bahama, the Abacos, Bimini, back down towards Andros, New Providence, Eleuthera, so Grand Bahama, Freeport, Lucaya, and Nassau likely to get some thunderstorms. But now the central and even the southeast Bahamas are beginning to see some thunderstorm activity. This is an area that has been plagued by very dry and extremely hot conditions. So Cat Island, Long Island, Exuma, Rum Key, San Salvador, the Acklands, back towards Mayaguana. Here comes some thunderstorms. Could even see some develop over the Caicos and as far south as Grand Turk, but the farther south and east that you go, the air is just a little bit dry. But it's good to see some rain for some areas of the Bahamas that have been oh so dry lately. Thunderstorms are also breaking out over the Straits of Florida back into the western sides of Cuba. We're going to get some isolated activity today across portions of the northeast side of the Yucatan. Look at these thunderstorms flaring up. Good lightning count. These have been really healthy thunderstorms, mainly just inland from the coast of Cancun and Cozumel and Tulum, and then working their way west through the afternoon hours. It's going to be isolated thunderstorms today for Belize and Guatemala in the northern sides of Honduras, including the Bay Islands. Relatively dry forecast there, but a few isolated showers aren't out of the question. Same situation across the Cayman Islands for today. Now, better storm chances have already developed across the northern sides of Jamaica. We've actually had some thunderstorm at sea advisories already up, but for Hanover and St. James and Trelawney and St. Anne parishes, on over towards St. Mary and Portland parishes, the northern sides of Jamaica, some pretty good thunderstorm activity already today. If you guys have seen some of these thunderstorms, let me know in the comments section below. On this visible satellite imagery, look at those thunderstorms develop. Now, Are they going to make a run back down towards Kingston and Port Morton, Spanish Town? They might, but I'm still favoring the northern half of the island. But there is a nice little ball of thunderstorms trying to get back towards Linstead at the hour. So even places like Mandeville and Maypen have an opportunity for some storms, and eventually they may push west, where places like Montego Bay, Negril, and Saint-Lamar will get into it. But a fairly active, wet forecast with some good storms across Jamaica on this Friday. Scattered thunderstorms are breaking out right now over portions of Hispaniola. They're pretty kind of just dotting the landscape, nothing very concentrated, but an opportunity here or there. By the way, let me put on the wind gusts. Just wanted to get you an idea, too, of where we've had some gusty winds for today. So those are going to pop on. It's mainly been fairly light winds out west. But then as we head back to the east, I just want to, again, mention how hot, how dry, and how windy it has been across Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Now, we're going to get some isolated thunderstorms again for today in Puerto Rico, mainly on the western sides of the island, but you're still getting some winds in the Ponce area, 30, 35, even close to 40 miles an hour. We could see some isolated showers across the Lesser Antilles for today ahead of our remnant low now of what's Dolly. Remember, I mentioned in yesterday's video there was some tropical moisture with elongated tropical axis coming through today, and you can see that extra cloud coverage, and it's broken out a few showers and a few rumbles of thunder here and there. Nothing outrageous for today, but we've had that opportunity. Again, the gusty winds, Anguilla, St. Bart's, over 30-mile-an-hour winds. We've had some good winds down towards Dominica as well. And remember, higher elevations of these islands are going to be susceptible to some very gusty winds, with the squalls coming in from Dolly, what's left over of Dolly, beginning on Saturday evening. Showers and thunderstorms trying to break out over St. Lucia, St. Vincent of the Grenadines, Barbados for today, on towards Grenada and TNT. A little bit more isolated farther south overall, but still an opportunity here. You can see, again, a little bit of lightning developing with some of the storms over St. Vincent and St. Lucia at the hour. Again, concentrated in nature, but there'll be some heftier downpours from time to time. All right, let's get into the rest of the forecast as far as the tropics go, and then we're going to break down the rain outlook across the entire area. So there are a couple of spots that I'm going to say are must-watch areas for next week. Now, the first thing I want to mention is there's not a lot of consensus model-wise for what might be happening as we move into the first few days of September. If you notice, I haven't mentioned anything about what could be left over from Dolly as it gets into either the Western Atlantic or the Northern Caribbean. There's absolutely no model consensus as to whether that remnant low tries to redevelop. Most of them have it absolutely not happening. The European ensembles, the Euro ensembles, have this thing basically as a hurricane, but it also has a hurricane over the northeast side of the Caribbean, so we can basically dismiss that as just being, basically out to lunch. Believe it or not, it's going to be the Gulf that I want to keep a very close eye on for next week. Let me show you the models that I'm talking about here. We're going to start off with the European AI. Again, quiet over the weekend, even through Tuesday, but you're going to start to see some signals in the Gulf from the European AI in various ways mid to late next week and into next weekend, okay? So I'm going to loop this up for you guys one more time so you can see it. Again, this is just kind of a breeding ground potential mid next week into late next week and into the Labor Day weekend here in the United States. So something to monitor as just a boundary sits across the area and the Central Gulf. Could something develop along it? Now, when I first initially looked at this, I thought that this was the only model that was going to be showing anything like that. However, right before I came on the air recording this video, I took a look at the Google DeepMind model. You will notice that it falls apart, whatever is left over of Dolly, right over the Virgin Islands. So it's done. However, start to look in the Gulf as we get into Tuesday and into Wednesday of next week, and you're going to see more of those ensemble plots begin to pop up just like the European AI. Thursday and into Friday of next week, more and more signals begin to emerge there. So you have the European AI and the Google DeepMind hinting at least some possible development areas in the Gulf, maybe even the Western Atlantic Basin as we get towards the end of next week. It's something I'll be closely monitoring here. There's nothing imminent, but again, we've got two larger models at least showing, hey, this is a spot we need to monitor as we go into the first couple of days of September. Let's get into what's going to be happening rainfall outlook-wise here. I'm going to bring back on those marine forecasts. So back over to the model, and of course, we've really deep dive into the concentration of rain in the eastern Caribbean because of the leftover impacts of the tropical wave of Dolly. Other areas that we could see some scattered showers. Well, obviously, we're going to be following whatever moisture is left over from the remnants of Dolly that could easily move into Cuba and Jamaica, potentially north into the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas. Remember, we're also seeing on the European model a boundary moving through the Central Gulf and stalling out. And if that moisture from what's left over from Dolly can stick around, this could be a breeding ground for additional heavier rain here. Straits of Florida, Cuba, Western Atlantic, maybe even the Northwest Caribbean. The exact location is a little bit in question right now because there's a lot of factors that go into it, but it could feed in a lot of moisture into some of those areas. Otherwise, the Central American gyre will be active south. It will be quieter overall through the northern sides of Central America and the Yucatan. Scattered showers and thunderstorms on a daily basis could redevelop over Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Nothing extremely concentrated, again, until maybe mid next week, where if the leftover moisture from what was Dolly does interact with the boundary and we get a little blossoming of some showers and storms there. ABC Islands look relatively quiet. I'm not expecting much rainfall there. So rainfall totals, again, you'll see it coming out of the European model, right where we've already talked about, with several inches of rain spreading through the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Hispaniola. And then look at all the rain that could set up shop by mid next week across the peninsula of Florida, portions of the northern and central Bahamas, and just a kind of wet, sloppy forecast there with several inches of rain possible in those spots as well. Now, again, for my boaters, we have to keep an eye out for some swells that could easily be 2.5 or 3 meters in heights. 8, 9, 10-foot waves are possible as the remnants of Dolly pull through. But again, a fast-moving system at 25 miles an hour means that the larger waves don't stick around, but it may not be a great boating weekend. Again, finding some safe harbor outside of the windward sides of the islands, probably a pretty good idea. We're likely to see, again, all kinds of special marine warnings issued and rip current statements and small craft advisories to go along with the opportunity for the heavier rain. Still some gale conditions possible in the open waters of the Caribbean. At this point in time, we don't have the large wave and strong wind advisor, at least for now, back out into the southern coastline of Jamaica, but that could change before you know it. So once again, this is what's left over of Dolly. It is now a remnant low or an open tropical wave, but it doesn't mean that impacts aren't going to be felt in the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico beginning late Saturday into Sunday and Monday. If you live in these areas, expect there to be some pretty good squalls, some gusty winds, and some heavier rain. I'll be monitoring the situation for you guys. Thanks so much again for tuning in. Thanks for liking and subscribing. You guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you soon with your latest forecast.